Zuko here, but I guess you probably already know me.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Two Wise Girls podcast. Today we have a few different topics. I know one was Azula. Yeah, the Azula stuff that we want to talk about. It came up in my therapy session today. Like, that's how intense this Azula stuff is. So, we don't have to get into exactly the inspiration, but we did see discussion about Azula being a golden child. And, we've talked about this. We probably mentioned her in our Golden Child video, but we've never gone in depth into Azula and her past and stuff. I'm a little more versed in this than Shannon is because I have read some of the comics and Shannon has not yet, but I did send her some relevant like comic pictures for this. So yeah, basically with Azula being the Golden Child, I mean, it's pretty obvious in the show that Ozai tends to favor her, and that favoritism comes from her ability as a firebender. You know, we're told certain things like you can't do lightning bending if you can't control your emotions, yet she can do it. You know, she's practically a prodigy is the word used over and over and over again for her. And that is what most people see on the surface, and a lot of people will also go into, well, she's more Ozai-like, and that's why maybe Ozai favored her over Ursa, who's like Zuko and Azula's mom, and that maybe even Ursa didn't like Azula, and that's the part I want to push back on a little bit today. Especially in light of the comics, I can kind of see where someone got that impression, which is there's a flashback in one of the comics where we see what happened when Azula first learned to firebend. And basically, the story is that Azula was holding a baby turtle duck and lit it on fire. And so her parents seeing that had two very different reactions. Ozai's like, oh my gosh, my prodigy daughter, you should compliment her. And you see Ursa's face in the comic. And she has this face like, oh my god, what is she doing? Like, horrified, right? And because she's scared of Ozai, she just goes with like, yeah, that's really great. You're just like your dad. Another kind of flashback scene from the comics is we do get, like, there is a comic that goes over what happened to Zuko's mom, and I don't want to spoil it too much for people who may not have heard it, so you can cover your ears for a second. But it is relevant to the discussion because Azula does have feelings over when they find out what actually happened to her mom. So basically what happens, and I can't remember how much of this was in the show and how much was just in the comics, is that when Liu Tian, who is Iroh's son, dies in the war, Ozai goes to his dad and he's like, Iroh doesn't have an heir anymore, so I should be the next Fire Lord. And his dad freaks out. He's like, that is crazy. Why would you say that? And just for that, I think Zuko should die. So you see what it's like to lose a son. And yeah, so, I mean, I was with you in the first half, dude, right? But the second half, it's crazy. And so both Ozai and Ursa don't want this to happen, and Ozai still wants the throne. So part of Zuko's mom's past is that she was well-versed in herbalism. And so she knew this specific herb that had like poison quality that would be undetectable. She said she could brew it for Ozai to give to his dad. And Ozai's like, okay, you can do that, but you have to leave. Like, I won't kill Zuko. I'll make sure that he lives, but you're out of here. And so she eventually does leave and goes back to what her old life would have been. And so that's as much of a spoiler as I'll give you guys. You should read the comics. The comics are great. But Azula has feelings around this. So we see flashbacks of Ursa leaving the castle. And one thing I noticed right away is first bedroom she goes to is Azula. Azula's asleep. She gives her a kiss. And then she moves on to Zuko before saying goodbye to him. And even just that, like, it's hard to explain this from a maternal standpoint completely, but your kids aren't always great. You know, like your kids aren't always going to be your favorite person that day. Sometimes they're going to really get on your nerves. Sometimes they're going to push your buttons. Sometimes they're going to trigger the fuck out of you. And even when that happens, it's like the moment that they fall asleep, you see them fully restful and peaceful. It's different. And you're like, you know what? I can get over this. Everything's fine.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
I kind of see that as like one of those moments for her as a mom. Like certainly she's terrified of Azula. I will give that, like, that is canon. She's terrified of Azula because she sees what Azula's becoming. She sees how Azula reacts to the praise she's getting from her grandpa and her dad. So that's what terrifies her. Ursa had no other friends in the castle besides Iroh, who was off at war at the time. So, you know, she was fully surrounded by these awful people, and really the only person besides that was her son, who was like this really sweet kid, was not thriving in that environment. And so her favoritism to Zuko, I think, doesn't necessarily come from a place of I don't love Azula. It comes from a place of Azula doesn't need me. She's thriving here. She's doing okay here. She's okay in this environment. And so Zuko needs me more. Was she wrong? Yeah. Yeah, she was wrong. And we end up finding this out in, there's a specific comic called Azula in the Spirit Temple, where this mysterious temple appears in the forest that has a spirit in it that wants to give you exactly what you want in dream form. And basically, Azula, when she goes there, ends up getting called out about like how terrible her relationships are, especially. One of the visions she has is of her mom, and she tells her mom, "You abandoned me. You abandoned me. You saved Zuko, and because you saved Zuko, I had to become Dad's weapon, and I had to become this thing that I didn't want. You ruined me." Like that's the word she uses to her mom, is "you ruined me." And like the golden child part of it that definitely I had to speak about in therapy was, you know, like it goes on to talk about how Azula in relationships thinks that, you know, like people are not going to do okay without her, that they're like the worst state of their life without her, and she's like, yeah, they're nothing without me. And they all go on to hurt me. And so the vision tells her, oh, so you want all the people to apologize to you and promise to never do it again? I can't tell you how many times my therapist is like, that's not going to happen for you, Mandy.
Yeah.
Like we've had that exact discussion. So it hit on my trauma so much. But it kind of, when you are a golden child and you are somewhat of a weapon, I mean, I don't like to think of myself as a weapon, but in my environment in particular, there was not a lot of emotional safety around my mom. It was kind of similar to Ursa in a way of like, you know, she just didn't fit in with this family, and the family being my mom's family more so than like, you know, a dad or grandpa being the evil people here. But watching my mom not have safety in those relationships shaped a lot of how I became the golden child. It shaped me becoming her like guard dog in essence of like, you know, I will chomp your head off if you do anything to cross the family. Maintaining that family image, maintaining the prodigy status in my realm at least was I think my mom really liked the fact that I was not like other girls, because she considers herself a jock and not a girly girl. So even though I do present more femme than my mom, I think that there was something to the, oh, she's not like the other girls. And that was such a huge part of my personality. for the longest time. And then the academic stuff. Academic stuff has always been easy for me. You know, like getting good grades, writing. It just it came naturally. And so that those kinds of things, like I just I automatically got the praise for it. And if I didn't automatically get praise in something, I quit it. So yeah. But the argument someone was trying to make was that point that Ursa was afraid of Azula, and again, I don't think that's fair. I don't think that that's what was happening in that relationship. And Azula, unfortunately, does not get a redemption arc even in the comics after having her little spirit temple getting called out. When she realizes the entire thing's an illusion, she's like, "Oh yeah, the whole thing was fake. Okay, good. Bye." um, and that's it. I would have loved to see some more growth in her, but it doesn't happen that way. She continues wreaking havoc after the events of, you know, like the Avatar mainline show, because in her mind, she's A, the rightful heir to the throne, and B, if she isn't the rightful heir to the throne, she needs to test Zuko to make sure he is. And, you know, still carrying on kind of the philosophy of her dad and her grandpa, even though they're no longer there to do it themselves.
Yeah. There's some stuff I wanted to say. The main thing I wanted to say was Azula is somebody that people talk about in this weird way that I think is left over or something from true crime, where they'll talk about her as if like something was off about her when she was born. There was always something wrong with her, as if she was just like born that way. Like a lot of true crime accounts try to say that about like serial killers and things like that. That's not true. That's not true about anybody. And so one thing I definitely wanted to make sure to mention is that the idea that like, oh, she's just a sociopath. Number one, don't say that word anymore. No, don't say that word anymore. That is
A
not
lot of
like,
people lost their privilege to say that, for sure.
yeah, that's not an actual thing. It's not even like, it's called, the diagnosis that people usually mean when they say that is antisocial personality disorder. But like sociopath, if you ever like, just word to the wise, if you ever see somebody that's like trying to act like they're a mental health professional on the internet and they use the word sociopath or psychopath, they're not one, and don't listen to them anymore. Because that's not even something that anyone who has any sort of mental health like information, education of any sort would ever use. It's very, I don't know what to just, it's like saying an autistic person has Asperger's. It's extremely outdated and not something that anyone would use anymore. And so there's that. But so I'm sure there's some people out there somewhere on the internet that have diagnosed her with narcissistic personality disorder, because that's like the catch-all thing for anyone that does bad things that people don't know how to explain at this point on the internet. You could even, I think, argue that she could have a dissociative disorder or some sort of dissociative identity disorder, or something in the dissociative identity like umbrella, I guess is the best way to put it. But I just wanted to like remind people that the only way you get narcissistic personality disorder or a dissociative disorder or antisocial personality disorder is through severe trauma as a child. You're not like born like that. And so I just wanted to immediately push back against that idea that she was just born off or bad, because I know that's like one of those things. She's one of those characters that people say that about. And if you take them seriously as a character, you can't really say that about them. Like the show doesn't say that about them. In the TV show run, like she wouldn't be having a mental breakdown at the end of the show the way that she is if she actually was those things that you pretend like she is, because she wouldn't be affected by it. She wouldn't be feeling like having this collapse like inside her mind and things like that if she wasn't feeling like all of this pressure and was feeling period. She's feeling things all the time. The other thing I wanted to mentioned too when you're talking about their mom.
Mhm.
And this is like one of those things that I don't know if when you're the golden child in the family, it's easy to like see this like domino effect happen when you're not. But it's not, to me, it's not quite as easy as her mom chose Zuko and abandoned her.
Yeah.
You could say that, yes, but it's also like she had to. There
Mhm.
was there was no real choice in the matter. And that usually is how it goes in abusive families. There's usually one sibling that gets scapegoated out. That's why the scapegoat is a named role too, that is like chosen in some way by the abuser and is given way more intense abuse than the other child. It's not something really that you should honestly spend too much time trying to figure out, because it's not really something I think you could ever really pinpoint.
No.
Like Zuko was just Zuko. Like Ozai could have brought him in and helped him become exactly like Azula if he really wanted to, but for whatever reason he just didn't want to. And you can point at these things about his character that became true about him later on, but he could have used those things as a reason to like shape him into somebody else. Sometimes abusive people like Ozai like doing that. And so it's not even that. It's just when you have somebody in your family that is that abusive and they like choose that person where they are talking about killing them, even if
Mhm.
he's not the one doing it, killing them is on the table, and that means that that threat is always there for him to go back to at any point. You have to take precedent with them, because if you don't, they're going to be dead. And
Mhm.
so it's one of those things like, yeah, Azula as a kid has every right to be upset at her mom for that, because she was a child and she didn't understand what was going on. But that's one of those things that when you grow up and you look back at your family after many years of therapy, that is something that you can kind of see that, like, right, like this person had total control over everybody.
Yeah.
If my mom didn't like prioritize my sibling, or in my case like me, in that way, I would no longer be here. And then, and yeah, like my sister could be upset, like Azula could be upset that my mom didn't pay as much attention to her when my parents were married or whatever. But it was also like a thing of thank God, because it meant that most of the stuff that he was doing was directed at me and not her. And
Yeah.
I'm still glad about that now, in the way that I think Zuko was in some way. He's still, the way he always talked about Azula and the things I've seen about it after the comic books are over, it definitely always seems to have those sort of mixed feelings about her. That
Yeah.
even though she's unhinged and trying to kill me, she is my sister, and I know that what we went through because we were both there.
Yeah.
Um, but I just wanted to say that with their mom, like she really didn't have a choice, and it's one of those things that once the abusive person like picks their favorite child, it's also like it's one of those things that if you don't recognize the like power dynamic things that are really going on because you're a kid, um it's hard to like notice it. But the scene that you talked about when she's like burning something and the dad is all happy and she's worried, like if she, it's hard to like describe this fully, but that is such a dangerous, like super dangerous moment that's hard. It seems just like a normal thing, but it's one of those things that if the mom had shown any like anything towards Azula at all, like any emotions, any feelings, any thoughts, any opinions about what just happened, he would have seen it as a threat. And
Mhm.
he would have started going after Azula the same way that he was going after Zuko. And it's like you can't protect both of your children from their dad killing them at the same time. You can only do one. Because if you focus on one, the other one is out there flapping in the wind and you don't know what they're going to do. And so it's one of those things that it was more dangerous in that moment for her to try to save Azula. And that's like hard to I understand why that's hard for people to grasp, especially the kids that are dealing with the fallout from that. But it is just like a truth of that sort of situation that I'm not sure people completely understand unless you've been in a domestic violent relationship or like that, or have had enough time to like really go back and think about it. But it is just like one of those things that it's really, really dangerous. In that situation, you have to just like shut off your feelings almost so that they don't think you care. Like I used to do that all the time with people. I used to act like I didn't like a lot of family and friends and stuff so that my dad would not think that I cared. Like I would purposefully try to hide everything that I ever liked, including just like books and like TV shows and movies and stuff that I liked, so that he wouldn't find out about it, because I
Yeah.
knew that he would somehow find a way to ruin it, or he would try to ruin it, or he would try to stop me from doing it. And so everything about myself, I try to keep it secret so that he wouldn't find out about it, so that he wouldn't do that. And so
Yeah.
their mom in that situation, it was just like, there is like no safe way to get me away from this, to get her away from this man. And she thinks that it's a good thing that she makes him happy because that's her father.
Yeah.
And like there's no like safe way to explain to her how much danger she's actually in. So it's almost like better that she almost doesn't realize. Because if she did, then she would be so paralyzed that she wouldn't be able to do anything. And that would also make it worse because he would get mad at her and start hurting her the way that he hurts Zuko all the time. It's just like a runaway train that when you're like a kid watching your parents interact, you have no idea that any of these things are going on unless you're someone like me. Like I somewhat understood it a little bit when I was a kid, but I definitely know a lot more now as an adult. But I like somewhat was picking up on that stuff when I was a kid, but that was not because I wanted to. I just did. But it is one of those things that her mom is in a very difficult position. I don't think anyone could like get out of that without one of your kids or both of them feeling
Yeah.
like you've let them down somehow. Like I'm sure that both of them feel like she didn't do enough to help them. That's very normal
Yeah.
to feel like that, I guess, is the main thing. And just you can't have a show like Avatar The Last Airbender where they have really good characterization of every main character and then act like Azula as a villain is in like a gigantic tragedy. And
Yeah.
that she could be this person that is happier. I almost like weirdly like the fact that they didn't have her like start to do like the Zuko, life changing road trips with Azula instead of life changing road trips with Zuko in that same way, just because it does take a really long time. It's not something that you just like have like a crazy vision one day and then you just like magically snap out of it and you're like, oh, I should change every single facet. No. No. I was thinking about going to therapy for 15 years at least before I actually did it. I'm sure it was a long time like that for you too. Like it takes a lot. Like there's lots
Yeah.
of little moments like that. It's just enough little moments like that happen that they like accumulate over time where you finally decide. And so, but I do really like that they even though she's still being the villain, they are introducing like these little things about her because you have to make her her own character. You do on something like Avatar. You have to. Everyone is their own person and
Yeah.
has their own backstory and has like their own thoughts and opinions about what they're doing. You can't just have her be like this black hole of like, she's just really evil, guys.
Yeah.
And that's it.
I mean, what me and my brother end up talking about a lot is like the Azula to Katara transformation is what he calls it that I went through, which, like Katara in some senses is also a golden child, but we see her use that in a different way than Azula does because she's not using it to kind of lord over Sokka. She's not using it to intimidate him. She actually lifts him up quite a bit for him being, like a non-bender and him being the older brother. I do think that like, you know, she takes that same privilege and finds a way to share it with people, you know. But Azula, she never quite gets there because of that family like upbringing, the propaganda. We saw the propaganda machine in that show. We saw what the Fire Nation was teaching people. Imagine it coming from the actual leaders because you're part of the royal family. Like, it would only be more intense, this need to prove we're so great, this this conquest we're on to take over the entire world and wipe out all the other nations because we're the greatest. Like, it's true. All of it's true. And I, as one of the royal family members, am one of the greatest. The brainwashing has gotten to her so much. And she never quite lets it go, even knowing, like, what happened to her dad. Fully aware the dude is in prison. She off and on is in prison herself in the comics, I believe, too. And just, it does not register that, oh, he was still wrong. She's just like, oh, he was too weak. He got caught.
Yeah, like, he just didn't do it good enough.
Yeah.
But, like, I can do it the right way kind of stuff. Yeah, that's one of those phases that you get into.
Yeah.
Like, they're not bad. They're not wrong. They just, like, did certain things, but I can somehow do it better. That's not true, of course. Like, at a certain point you realize, like, oh, I'm doing the exact same stuff that they did because it's not possible to do it this way and have it not end up the way that it did. But people don't want to think that, and so they keep trying to make it work somehow. I want to have faith, at least, that one day she figures it out.
Yeah,
But yeah,
we'll have to see with, like, I didn't watch any of the leaks. I don't know if she's in it, and I've only seen imagery of the main crew from, you know, like the new stuff. It'll be interesting to see if they have her in it at all. You know, they might just skip over that. You know, maybe she gave up on trying to torture Zuko and just left. Who knows? Because, yeah, at least as far as I've read in the comics, she's hanging around just trying to make Zuko's life hard and prove that she would be a better leader. Still hanging on to my dad is the Phoenix King, which he came up with in the very last couple episodes.
yeah. I will say the one thing from the comics that you showed me when she was having those visions, the vision she had with Zuko, where he was telling her, like, you just want people around so that you don't have to think about all the horrible things that you're doing to people all the time. And I'm like, yeah, that's exactly what happens. That's exactly what she's doing. She wants, but it's like she doesn't actually want people. If she could, like, animate, like, stick figures that could, like, pretend like they were talking to her or looking at her, she would be fine with that, because she doesn't actually want people that have, like, personalities that will, like, actually have thoughts about anything that she's doing. Because anytime one of her friends, you know, I'm remembering the times, and as, like, it gets later on when her friends start, like, quote unquote disobeying her, but it's just literally just because they actually have thoughts of their own, and they have their own opinions about what they should be doing. And so instead of just doing whatever Azula says because she scares them enough that they won't, like, do anything unless she says it's okay, they eventually start doing stuff on their own because they get tired of it. And that's, like, always the thing with that sort of role, is that at a certain point people get tired of being afraid of you all the time, that they just start doing stuff anyway. Even though they're still afraid of you, because there's only so long that a person can live in fear like that, where some of it doesn't, like, fade away a little bit, and they just start being like, never mind, I'm just gonna do what I want. Like, I can't remember her name right now. The girl who is that Zuko's girlfriend?
Yes.
I liked her a lot. And, like, the episodes when she's, like, helping get somebody out of jail, when they are like, in a roundabout way, the gang is, like, in a roundabout way kind of helping her, strangely. They're, like, there at the same time, but like, I remember that when she does that, Azula was really mad that she did that because she didn't want her to. And the whole, like, beach episode is her just yelling at them because they're actually, like, doing things on their own instead of just doing whatever she says. Like, and that's that happens in both roles, like the scapegoat and golden child role. Like, we want people around, but we don't want people to actually ask us about anything that matters. Like, we want people there so that we don't have time to think about all the things that we're trying to avoid. Whether it's because we just want people around so that we don't have to think about how we've harmed people, or for me, it was like, I don't want to think about how people have harmed me and are harming me right now. I rather like not think about it. And if I'm around these people that don't talk about feelings ever, I never have to think about it. But that's very much what all those, like, no matter what role you have, that's what you're doing inside your head. You're just like doing anything to avoid it. And it, like, I did that with my friends too. We weren't really friends. Like, they were my friends, but it was weird friendship wise because we didn't really talk about anything that mattered. And yeah, we just didn't talk about anything in that same way. She doesn't want them to be their own people. Because then she can't just like use them as a way to forget about all the things that she wants. That's why your friendships suck if you have a really bad childhood for a while, because that's what you're using them for. They're just a distraction. They're not actual real. It's hard to like really call them real friends at a certain point because they're more just like something you're using to not think about all the things you're trying to forget.
Yeah, I was trying to like figure this out with my therapist this morning of like, what really is the difference before and after for me? And I would say it's not necessarily that I didn't have empathy before. It would probably have appeared to a lot of people like I didn't have empathy before. It's just I always thought I was right, so your feelings don't matter. You know, like I know you have them. I know they're there, but like
Oh yeah, that was the other thing I want to say about Azula is some people say that she doesn't have empathy like you just said. And like you just said, it's not that you don't, or she doesn't, or that people in that role don't. You do. You have empathy, but it's just that it's selfish. Like, that's honestly the best way to put it. Like, you have empathy. You feel empathy for people, but the empathy you feel doesn't like override what you think is the right thing to do, in the way that it can sometimes, like, for me, the scapegoat, the opposite role, the empathy that I had for other people was bad. Honestly, a lot of the time, like, it's a good thing to have empathy overall. Like, not saying that, but my empathy was to the point that I would just like let people do horrible things to me, absolutely horrendous things to me, because I would think about like how they would feel, and I would be like, well, I don't want to make them feel bad, so I'm just gonna like let them do this. And so the polar opposite side, when you're like the golden child role, you have empathy. You understand when somebody is hurting. You can see it, but you also just think like, well, I'm right for what I'm doing, and so I have empathy, but it's not going to like stop me from doing what I want to do. And that's, I think, the thing that's hard about when you realize, when you start realizing stuff, is you realize that like, oh, I was wrong though. And I should have stopped. That's why I think Azula is like trying to hang on to the idea in the comics and stuff still, as far as we know, that her dad and stuff wasn't completely wrong. Because if she starts to believe that, then she has to acknowledge that she did all of these things to all these people and she was in the wrong. And she's desperate to not be in the wrong, as anyone would be in that situation. And so she just keeps trying to convince herself that she wasn't, because then you have to think like, I did all this stuff that hurt people, but at the time I thought it was the right thing to do. And then when you realize maybe it wasn't the right thing to do, you're like, oh my God, like what? And that to me is like the real difference, is that you had friends and stuff before, from what you've told me. It's not like you didn't care about people. It's not like you didn't care about your brother or even Jake or your mom or like your family or whatever. But it's just like different now because you don't feel like as threatened or whatever is the right word there about being wrong. Like when you're a golden child person, to me, at least how I see it, like being around some people that have been, is that when you are in that role, being wrong is like a huge threat to everything. So of what I just said. And so one of the things that is good for you guys is when you can just be like, yeah, I don't know what I'm doing. And I might have made the wrong decision. But that's fine, because the entire world isn't going to end. Because my like basis of my life is no longer around this idea that I'm right about everything and that everyone else just doesn't understand me and is like stopping me from reaching my potential or whatever because they're in the way. Like the clip from the comics of Azula telling her mom, like, you should have just let Zuko die. And I was like, I started like laughing when I saw she was like, you should just let my brother die and then everything in my life would have been fine. But that's like the golden child way of looking at it, of like, it's my brother that's the problem. It's this other person that's the problem. And so if this other person is gone, then everything in my life will be fine. And then but then it's like, that's not true. Like, and I'm sure my sister felt like that about me. I know she felt that about me growing up because she would explicitly tell me these things of like, if I wasn't around, then whatever she wasn't happy with would magically just not be there anymore. And I'm pretty sure that she found out when I went to college that was not true at all. Because I wasn't there anymore. And she was probably like, oh wait, this is actually worse now. Because there was nobody there to like deal with my dad anymore. He used to come and scream at me, and now I'm sure during that time he was coming and screaming at her and my mom instead of my mom and me. And so it's just one of those things that that's what I feel like is the difference, really, is like you have those relationships before, but there's just like something there like stopping you from being able to be more honest with them that makes them more like deep, like real bonds. Like with Azula, like I said, her friends could have been like cardboard boxes, and it wouldn't have been any different because they didn't really have anything in common that like bonded them together as friends. But the people in your life now, you have actual things that keep you connected to them, that have nothing to do with just like, oh, we're in the same class together, and that's it. It's like that's how my friendships were too. Like that's why I don't really have any friends, but that many anyway, because the way that I made friends was like going to school or like going to work or something like that. Like the friends that I have now are way better friends than I've ever had before, but it's just, that's why it's hard when you figure this stuff out to find new friends, because the way they used to do it was just like, oh, you're nearby and you say you like me, so we can just like coexist together for a while until we eventually stop being friends for some reason. And it's just now when you pick friends, it's much more like, oh, this person, I actually really like something about this person that makes me want to keep talking to them. It's not just like, you're here and I can boss you around, or you're here and I let you boss me around because I like it when people tell me what to do, like it was with me growing up and stuff. I wanted to ask if you wanted to talk about any other Golden Children characters and stuff, since we brought up a couple ones.
I guess we gotta take to the sea.
That one looks good.
Other ones.
Padme, I still want to do more research on. Rory is obviously the example I end up going with the most, because people don't have quite the same reaction to her that they have to Azula. Even though Rory has it in her to be cruel. I don't know how much of the show you've actually watched, but an example of her being cruel is when she goes to college, she has to do a review of like a ballet performance at Yale. And she spends a good chunk of the article just fat shaming one of the ballerinas. And so it's like one of the first times that she has to deal with someone reacting so negatively to her, because the ballerina starts like writing "die bitch" or something like on her door, on her dorm and shit.
I remember that. Yeah.
I know the ballerina from the ballet.
That's right.
Your outfits are made of tulle, aren't they?
You're a jerk.
I know. You wrote that on my door.
You're lucky that's all I did. Your review was mean and petty and despicable.
This was all in the line of duty. It was an assignment from my editor, so there was nothing personal, okay?
You called me a hippo.
No, I compared you to a hippo. That's not calling you a hippo, and it was a humorous comparison. I was trying to
destroy me and my company.
No, and think about it. I bet that more than likely very few people will even read the review, and most people aren't even interested in ballet in the first place. It's unfortunate and awful, and I hate it, but what can you do? It's Avril Lavigne's world, and we're just living in it.
You're a jerk. I just wanted to come tell you that to your face. You're a jerk, and I hope you die. Bye, jerk. Die, jerk.
And like my mom, this is like the thing that is funny. When my mom would like see me watching it and she would see parts of the episodes when I would watch it, or sometimes my sister would watch it with me, she would comment, she's like, Lorelai is really immature. She's like, why is Lorelai wearing like clothes with like juicy on the butt? Or like, why is she like talking so fast? Or why is she like doing all these things with her? Like my mom was like calling out the like unhealthy things that Lorelai was doing with Rory when we were watching it, but my sister and I were just like, shut up. Like we didn't want to think about it. It was just like a nice fantasy to imagine that a mom and a daughter could be that close and it would be healthy. Of course teenage me would want to like believe in some sort of fantasy like that. But it is one of those things. People have gotten a little bit better about realizing that about Rory, but there's still a lot of people. I still see a lot of posts and stuff talking about, especially in the fall, about Lorelai and Rory and how they love watching Gilmore Girls and they think that they have like the best relationship and all that stuff. And it's like fascinating to think about all the different characters on that show and what roles they play. And when you count like the grandparents or like characters like Luke or Christopher or the kid or like the people in the town and stuff like that. But I do remember when I watched the season when she like loses it, when she gets critiqued once and she steals a boat with Logan. So this is like my Gilmore Girls like backstory thing. I always liked Logan. I wanted him to end up being like nice. I'm still mad at the movies for going hard on him just being not a good guy. And of course I'm gonna like a character like Logan. Look at his dad. Like Logan is from a
that's
rich.
a fair argument.
Yes.
I'm actually like, I'm not Team Logan at all. I kind of hate him with her, but I have my reasons.
So this is like my thing with like this whole thing is I hated Jess because to me it was very obvious that the writers wanted me to like Jess to the point that they started changing other characters' characterizations to make him look better. And I was this is stupid. I have a brain and I can tell what you're doing, and it's insulting to me that you think that I won't notice. And I also just reminded me of a lot of people that I knew that would be like that, like kind of like the kind of boyfriend you mentioned before about how like they only are nice to you and they're not nice to anyone else. I was like, get away from that man. Like, get away from him. He's a jerk to literally everyone else you've ever met. Get away from him. He's not somebody that I want Rory to be around. If he's only nice to her, eventually he's going to stop being nice to her. And that's just like not a good thing when you have that sort of dynamic going. That's how I saw it just when I was watching the show. And so that's why people usually get confused when I say that I hate Jess, but I like Logan. But it's purely just because with Logan's dad is so abusive with Logan, and you can see it very clearly. Like one of my favorite scenes, really, and it's in like the season 5 finale. I watched that finale a million times when she ends the episode like moving in with her grandparents and everything and steals the boat and all that stuff. But I love the scene in that finale when her mom gets her out of jail and she goes back to her room and Logan's like sitting in front of her door of her room and he stands up and he's like, what did he say to you? And she's like, what do you mean? Like, what did he say to you? What did my dad say to you? And he just keeps saying it over and over again. She keeps trying to push him off and he's like, what did he say to you? He said something to you to make you react this way. I know he did. So just tell me what it is. I've had conversations like that with so many people. What did my dad say to you? What did he say to you to make you feel this way? You're not used to dealing with somebody like that. I know it had to be him. I know how cruel and horrible he can be. So what did he do? And so that's why I always liked Logan for that, because he was somebody that very obviously had a very abusive dad that was controlling every aspect of his life and was not letting him be his own person. And and if the show was actually written by people that were stupid, honestly, I think that they would have let him actually figure that stuff out instead of being this sad story that he never got to figure out, like, who he really was. He just, like, ended up being what his dad wanted him to be, which is really sad. But, like, I liked him. I even liked him in season 6 because when the entire time when Rory was dropping out of school and she was trying to act like that was a good thing, he was like, I know you're going to go back. And she's like, I'm never going back. And he's like, you're going to go back. You're going to hate being out of school. You love school. You love going to school. You love doing this. You're going to go back. And he was right. He was absolutely right about it. But like, he didn't make her, he didn't like try to force her, but he just told her, like, I know that you're going to go back one day. I need to just like say that I know that like you're trying to convince yourself that you've like left this life behind and you're never going to return. But I just know that that's not true. And I'm just going to like let you figure it out on your own because what can I do? But I just liked that part of him that he just didn't lie to her about that, didn't try to pretend like any of that was the right thing to do, but just kind of like, he's like, I can't stop her from abandoning school because my dad was horrible to her. And felt probably really guilty about it. That's why I'm always annoyed with that show of how they depicted him, because there's so much there. And they just instead made him like a party boy all the time.
Yeah, that's what rubbed me the wrong way. And especially that, like, I could have forgiven him had his proposal not been marry me and move to San Francisco or we're just broken up. You know, no long distance, no long engagement, nothing like that. It was either we get married and we move to San Francisco or nothing in the finale. And that's where, like, if he had been like, you know what, I want you to do your thing, but here's a ring. You know, like, here's a ring so you know that we are set. I would have been a lot more forgiving of who he was. But yeah, the thing with Rory though is that she does end up, I think, being better for having some separation with Lorelai, and you can tell she never goes back completely to the way things are after she has that period where they don't talk. She keeps more from Lorelai. She's not as enmeshed anymore. And like, yeah, she still has to deal with some of the fallout of everybody told me I was wonderful and I don't know how to exist as a normal human being as an adult. But it probably would have been a lot worse had she just kept going. Had she had someone tell her, oh no, Mr. Huntsberger is completely wrong. You know, like Mitchum was his name, I think.
Mitchum.
Yeah, he was completely wrong, and I'm gonna go buy out his newspaper so that I can, you know, like give you this position or something. It could have gone that way. I'm glad it didn't. I'm glad she had to sit with, you know what, maybe he was right, but I could be better. Yeah. I mean, she didn't completely learn her lesson because, as we saw in the mini series, she goes to a job interview without having anything prepared. Who the hell is that? That's not our Rory. But,
no.
Yeah.
And well, that's like I remember for years there was this one spoiler source for Gilmore Girls, Michael Osceola, I think his name was. I don't know where he is now. I'm sure he's still working somewhere doing TV journalism. He used to do this weekly spoiler chat thing where you could like send in questions about all the different shows that were on. But he was a huge Gilmore Girls fan. He like met the cast a bunch of times. He got invited to the set a bunch of times. So he always knew about stuff going on with that show first. And I remember for years, he talked about how Amy Sherman Palladino and her husband had, Daniel Palladino had like the last 4 words of the series like planned out. And I was like, I know, like high school me was like, I know that it's her telling Rory that she's pregnant, or her telling Lorelai that she's pregnant.
Yeah,
I know that, and I absolutely hated the way that they did that in the actual movie thing that they did. Like, she's just repeating the pattern again. Because her life is
Yeah.
a mess. She doesn't even know who the father of her baby is.
No, she
And
does know. It's implied. She knows.
yeah.
It's very heavily implied that it's Logan.
Mm-hmm.
Because he is kind of the Christopher of her generation.
And I hate
And,
that. I
yeah,
hate
I
that.
hate it. And that conversation that she had with Christopher, where he's like, "Oh, I just let your mom have you. Like, I gave it to her because I knew that she would do better than I ever did." Ugh. There's
Yeah.
something so icky about that.
Yeah, that show, you can talking about Rory and Lorelai, and it is such an interesting thing because Lorelai, it's kind of one of the things that people don't always acknowledge about family generational trauma is that you can't necessarily just like fix it all in one go with from like nothing. It may seem like you're the only one who's ever done it, but when you look back and like look at stuff, you can kind of see it. Like there were, like in my own family, like my mom did some things, like she did go to therapy and stuff on and off when my parents were getting divorced. And when I was a teenager, she like told me now, and I believe her, that she asked if I wanted to go, and I screamed in her face and told her no, because that sounds like something teenage me would do. That she tried to get my sister and I to go with her for like family sessions, and we both freaked out, and so she never asked us again, but she did try. But like there were things that my mom did, like her dad was very abusive like my dad was, but she stopped talking to him. And I saw her dad when I was 6, and I never saw him again, and he died when I was 16.
Oh, wow.
She didn't, like, yeah, like they didn't have a relationship at all when my parents got together either. Like me being born was some of the times when they did see each other for a couple years on and off, but then it just went back to how it was before, because he was just never able to like actually be there. And she, was like, no, I don't want this person in my life, and that's it. And so she did do some things first. I didn't really think about it or realize it really until I was doing it myself, and then looked back and realized that she did some things. I just like took it a lot farther and was able to kind of like almost build on what she kind of started, and just took it as far as you can really take it. But that is like a thing that Lorelai really, her having Rory was her way of getting away from being stuck in that golden child-ish role. She was almost like both at the same time, sometimes with her parents, different roles with like different parent, which is possible. When she was 16, but her reaction to that was then being like enmeshed with her daughter, because she was so emotionally like distant from both of her parents that she like went too far the other way. That's very common for people to do that.
Yeah, I overcorrect all the time. So, like, going back to the golden child thing, one way that I've overcorrected is going from that, like, yes, I have empathy, I can understand what people are feeling in the moment, to I don't want to make people feel anything. So I was talking to my therapist about it today. I have my 3 safe people. It's you, my brother, and Jake. Like, you're the 3 people I talk to the most. Everybody else gets whatever version of me I feel comfortable enough to show them. And I was talking to my therapist today about how I hate it. Like, I hate that. I feel like I'm gray rocking the entire world in a way. And it's this really crazy overcorrection of going from like, I don't care if I'm making someone feel bad, to I don't want to make someone feel bad, so I'm gonna not do anything.
Yeah, like I can say this with us, that you like
Yeah.
preemptively will like when us doing our YouTube channel, you're like, I'm gonna sit. You've told me this before, just so people watching me knows I'm not making this up. Of you saying that, like, I'm gonna like sit back and not say anything so that she has a chance to say stuff, because I don't want to take anything over or make her feel like I'm doing too much, or that it's becoming somehow my thing. And when you tell me that, I'm like, I want you to do that. Like, we are doing this together. I wanted to do this with you. You can't be going too far, because I want you to be as involved in it as me, which you are. But it's just funny when you say that stuff. Like, you preemptively decided that I would get mad at you if you did the things that I was asking. I feel like this is like, see, with me, I get scared that I'm taking it over too much and that I'm talking too much and I'm like making it my own thing, because that was one of those things that um my dad would say to me when I was growing up, that my sister would also sometimes say to me that she got from him, that I was like this really abrasive personality who couldn't see things from other people's perspectives and was like stuck in my own way of thinking, and that I was like too hard on people and I was a bad friend because I whatever. Basically, actually, when I think back on that now, it's more that I had my own morals and like opinions about stuff, and I wasn't willing to like change them just because somebody disagreed with me. Like, I wasn't going to cut people out of my life exactly, but I was also going to tell them when I thought they were being ridiculous. Like, one of my best friends in high school was a hardcore Republican, and I would talk about how idiotic George Bush was all the time, because he was president when I was in high school, was when he first got elected the first time. And so, yeah. And so at the time, people like that would think that I was being like stuck in my own ways in like a negative way. And so that idea of me is hard to like completely let go of because of autism. It's hard to like feel like I have a grasp on how people perceive me. But yeah, that kind of stuff happens sometimes. And for you like hold yourself back to a point where I'm like, why? Can you stop?
Yeah.
Stop.
It's gotten
Stop.
worse and worse. It really has. It like, and you guys might have seen the progression of this over the podcast. It's gotten worse. I'm aware. I'm aware. We'll just put it that way. But like, I have been trying to think, what is it that truly woke me up from this golden child nightmare? You know, like what truly was the thing where it's like, hey, you can't keep doing this. I mean, the big one, of course, is getting sick. Because that was the complete breaking point. But the point where I really did want to start changing was Jake. And I've told this story on the podcast before of like him pointing out to me, the way that you fight is really vicious and I can't handle it. And it's really mean and like it hurts a lot. And I was just sitting there thinking, why am I hurting this person? You know, like, why? What am I getting out of this? I could lose him. And you know, like having to sit with that was a lot on me. So I do think for golden children, a big thing for us are those protective relationships, like, and not in like the way that you are possessive of them, but like more the relationships where you're safe to have the golden child outbreak, but then have someone be like, okay, and that was wrong because of this. And I mean, that's also part of the reason why I like Jasper Rory. Parts of his personality were terribly written, but the parts that I did like were the fact that he was the person who would confront her head on and be like,
hey. Luke and Lorelai is a whole thing, but because there's a lot of like behind the scenes people, like Amy Sherman Palladino leaving the show. I could like rant about that forever. We'll do that another time when we do like a more in-depth thing about Gilmore Girls overall, because of how the way that she left. She wrote the show in the worst possible way ever. There was no way for them to get out of the corner that she put them in. And it was very obvious the last half of season 6 that she did that, or season 5, that she did that on purpose. Because she was like changing Lorelai's character in a way that didn't make sense. That whole last half of the season, and it had to be to justify the stuff that she was setting up. But I will say that Luke and Lorelai, that Luke is like that person for Lorelai too. That he would just always like call her on her stuff and be like, what are you doing? Like, what is wrong with you? Why are you drinking so much coffee? Even just that he would like restrict the amount of coffee he would sell her every day, and she would like tell she would talk and tell all these like whimsical whatever stories, but he wouldn't like be as brought in by them as everybody else, he would be like, yeah, and and he was just like this very like normal, very grounded, normal dude that wasn't affected by all that other stuff. And so she had to like actually be herself around him, which is why it was such a big deal when they actually got together, because they were both had to be like more themselves. And I think that's honestly what it is with like everybody, no matter what role you're in a family, is I call them normal people, but you have to be around like normal people that make you realize like I want whatever that is. How do I do that? and you just have to be around people that don't come from the same sort of families as you do, to almost like realize that this is like another way that you could be. And you're like, oh damn, I want to be like that. How do I do that? I guess I have to go back to therapy, right? because that's the only way to like fix these problems, probably. But yeah, even with I will say that about Luke and Lorelai, that Luke was really that person for her that was a good dad with Rory, wasn't like enmeshed or anything like that at all with her, always just supported her, whatever. And like he didn't like any of the stuff that she was doing with school or with Jess necessarily, or with like Logan or the grandparents or anything like that necessarily either. But he also just kind of like stood back and let it happen, and then like told Lorelai, like, what are you doing? Like, why are you just like sitting back and letting your daughter self-destruct like this when you could be offering her help instead of offering her nothing? And things like that. And so that's honestly, he's probably the healthiest person in that entire show, which is why he's like the one normal person that everyone thinks is really crabby all the time.
Live in the magical sunshine land, and he's the one person
in Connecticut where there's nobody else but white people.
Oh, okay. I had this argument with people on TikTok. I'm going to say it here just because I can. Stars Hollow is a fictional town. It could have any demographics that Amy Sherman Palladino and the writing and producers and the casters wanted, but they still chose all white.
Yeah,
that's a choice.
She did the same thing with her other show too. I remember people saying it. And like, this is one of those, I live in Wisconsin. I feel like that's a place where people think there's only white people that live here. There's not. There is a lot of other groups of people that live here. And so if you have a show that's based in Wisconsin, but there's nobody else besides white people on your show, that's not right. That's not the right thing for where I actually live. It's not right for Connecticut either. There's definitely black people in Connecticut. There's people everywhere.
Having two Korean actresses play having two Japanese women play Korean people. That was also a strange choice, because people always bring that up when they're like, oh, there's diversity because there's the Kims, and there's Gypsy, and there's Mrs. Patty. And
her name's Gypsy.
Yeah, even that. So, okay, but back on target. I think I've also talked about this before, but a big thing for me was healing my relationship with my brother also was a big factor in why I changed. And part of that was specifically just because of William. Seeing how we interacted with William kind of, it led the pathway for me to realize he's been there for me all along. Even when I was a shit to him, even when I was terrible, he's always been there. He's always been consistent.
I don't know how to talk about my family. I force them. Like I force people to have these epiphanies at a certain point, because I exploded my whole family by telling everybody what happened with my dad, which like very aggressively forced them to deal with all these things that they didn't want to. And like, I think about it in like a nice way, that I know that my whole family changed because of me, and me like literally dragging them like through this thing to like make them almost just by proxy have to change. But because if they wanted me to still be around, they had to, but they did. And not just like my immediate family, the extended family that I see too, they all had to change, because if they didn't, I wouldn't talk to them anymore, because I didn't.
say, like, if anyone listening is in the golden child like situation currently, or still feels like they're being treated like the golden child, aligning with your sibling, your scapegoated sibling, is the best way to like accelerate the healing process. And I say this because you guys end up realizing the same thing that we realized, but like decades ahead of us. You know, like, you've already gone through all of this. You've already realized your parents weren't perfect, for example, and that everything that you learned from them isn't necessarily true. And we've always been like, oh no, it has to be true because I've been following it to the T. You know, it has to be the truth. Otherwise, what do I have left?
Yeah. Need to like jump in as soon as you say something that makes us think that you're ready to like hear all that stuff now. Like, it's never too late. There's never a time where we're going to be like, I don't want to listen to this from you, or you made me wait too long, or I'm mad at you now because you didn't figure it out before. That's never going to happen. It never happens. It's never too late, ever. There's never a point where we're going to be so angry at you that we're not going to hear you out. As long as some like horrific abuse didn't happen between the two of you, that is impossible to like figure out. But even with that, if there's actual literal like, you know, physical abuse or something like that happens, even that can still be somewhat figured out with the help of like therapists and stuff. I feel like sometimes you feel like you can feel like defeated, or like, why should I try because it's not going to work? But it usually does work at a certain point. It takes a while. Like, it doesn't happen overnight. It takes time. And you have to, like, you know, wait the other person out, because scapegoats definitely don't trust anybody. So we're going to be not sure if you're actually being serious or being scared that you are, that you're going to change your mind again or something. But after that kind of stuff goes away, then it just is a better relationship overall. You just have to like give it time. But that's always the thing I want golden children sort of people to know, or anybody besides like the scapegoat role, is that we're never going to like turn against you to the point where we like don't want to help you. We want you to do that. We always want you to do that. And so it's never too late to like come to us and be like, oh, I realize all these things. We're not going to throw it back in your face that hard, especially when you first start, because we want you to keep going.
Yeah, and I think like a good way to put it is that in a lot of ways, a strategy that people employ without realizing it in these dysfunctional family systems is the divide and conquer, you know? And so this scapegoat golden child dynamic serves to divide your children. It serves for them not to realize things together. And once you let go of that, you know, like, you guys have the power to be like, we're going to call the family out on all of the bullshit now because you see it first, but I have the voice.
We'll talk about it again. You'll have time to look into Padme and stuff.
Yeah, I've been wanting to read the Padme books. Just, there's Gemma, that one. I send you her videos every once in a while.
She's great.
Yeah, she's a big Padme fan, and she's hyped up the books enough where I'm like, oh, I need to read this.